я щойно побачила, як летить ракета. І я почула це.
We are back with our good friend of the show, Pete Blaber, former elite special operations commander. Pete, thanks for your time, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, good to be here, Todd.
So, a lot to talk about. There is a deadline. Trump has shrunk the time for when, I guess, massive sanctions, in his words, are going to be put on Russia. What we don't know really what those are going to be. We assume it's some type of sanctions against trading partners of Russia, maybe their oil exports or whatever, trying to shut off the cash flow for the war. And even Trump said that's probably not going to work. So what's the point of doing it? But, you know, we've said all along that Trump holds the power to end this war today, just by shutting off the arms flow to Ukraine and said, make a deal. But that's not happening. Instead, we're getting nuclear threats. So I'm going to turn it over to you and let you take it where you want to go.
Yeah, thanks. So, I mean, first is just the reality of the situation on the ground. Pavlovsk is, partially controlled right now by Russia. It's surrounded on three sides. That's their biggest. Hold on, someone. I think that's me. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So, they're surrounded on three sides. They've also lost serious territory in the south. And, the Russians continue to move. Same casualty figures we've been talking about, real casualty figures. Ukraine's losing around 20,000 soldiers a month. Russia, who's very open about it, is between 2.5 and 5,000 is the estimate for the last couple months, which have been intense months. Mm-hmm. So, despite those clues, those reality clues, I think you have the article. The administration just put out a threatening tweet that said, the war must end. Do you have that to put up with the numbers?
I have this article, so let me just scroll through it here. It's a lot of unnecessary death. He talks about 8,000 soldiers from January 1, which is absurd for Ukraine, and 112,000 for Russia. So
right. So basically, 11 to 12 times the losses, which, you wonder. First off, that makes no sense. So you're threatening Russia, who's losing 11 times as many people, that they need to stop the war because of the killing. And we're not threatening Ukraine, or we're not saying the same thing to Ukraine. And, it's pretty obvious that it makes no sense for Russia to just do a random ceasefire, which is stop shooting. They're not a peace negotiation, because they're so far from peace negotiations based on Zelensky and his words. He just said 2 days ago that, Russia and Putin need to be destroyed. So, this is also against a backdrop of what we're learning day by day about the Russiagate hoax. Tulsi Gabbard has, released documents that paint an irrefutable picture about what happened. There's no longer any doubts. We're not talking circumstantial evidence. We're talking physical evidence of what they were saying, what they were planning, and what they were doing. So, Russiagate was a massive hoax, but what we're living through is Russiagate Part 2. And what, President Trump, I am just supposing is not figured out yet, is that Russiagate 1 wasn't just limited to taking down Trump. It was also created to engender animosity toward Russia, which would allow the deep state to wage war with Russia and take over the natural resources, as we've talked about in past episodes, that Ukraine is so rich in, and that would make the EU a verifiable mega economy, because they'd be self-sufficient on energy and agriculture. So, we're living through Russia hoax part 2. This is a hoax. And, it needs to be said, we're fortunate that Mr. Putin and, Lavrov have put up with the psychotic nonsense that's coming out of out of DC at this point. We talked last week about Kellogg, who is still in place, who is still advising the president on how to end the war, while he's involved with a company whose profit and success depends on the war continuing. It makes no sense. And then, the idea that Putin seeks to conquer Western Europe is as preposterous as it was that Russia hacked the 2016 election to enable Donald Trump to win. So once again, the great irony is the Ukraine war was created by the Obama and Biden administrations, and with cooperation from the neocon crazies in our State Department and our intel agencies. And of course, we now know that, Bolton and others were working to keep the war going during President Trump's first term. So, in addition to that, they continue to use NATO as an instrument to break up Russia. And this deal where they're just going to pay us for the weapons to give to Ukraine, I can't figure that one out at all. That's like a shell game. We're still giving weapons to Ukraine, and we're still prolonging the war and the killing. And again, Ukraine is losing not just a generation, but the next generation, and they're losing any ability to ever get back up on their feet as a competent economy.
I think that's part of the goal. I think that's part of the goal. I mean, there's multiple agendas here. It's kind of like you see people pushing a political or geopolitical agenda, but they're also getting rich at the same time. I mean, that's been a pattern all over. The election fraud, everything. We'll get rich, we'll sell these machines, and at the same time, we get all this power. That's going on in Ukraine, and I think there's multiple agendas. You mentioned Russia, but I think it's an agenda to take over the resources of the country, as you said, and that means getting rid of the people. So I think that's part of what's happening here, in my opinion.
Yeah, and even you've said that before, and when you hear that, again, your first reaction is no one would ever do that. No one would ever do such a thing. Yet now, along with the knowledge that is confirming what a farce the Russia gate was and the Russia hoax was, we're also learning that the mass migration plan in not just Europe, but was attempted by the Biden administration with open borders in the U.S., was nothing more than an attempt to dilute the voting bloc in each country to such an extent that populists could never win again. And you and I have been all over Europe, so it was hard for me to believe Merkel would do that to Germany, especially Germany, because they're so xenophobic, they're so nationalistic, but she did. And the same thing happened in Britain and France. And of course, the Biden administration tried to do it here, which President Trump is, working feverishly to reverse. So, this whole thing that that the force, losing all of their men and their manpower, which can be replaced by immigrants, and the vision would be that Ukraine would be this integral part of the EU, is totally believable, and it's the only thing you can come up with to make sense of what they've done. So, again, it's hard to understand how President Trump is falling for this, because he's been so good at pressure testing things along the way on every other topic. But I really believe, as we've talked about before, he's just surrounded by individuals who are 100% on that neocon side of keeping the war going and not caring one iota about Ukraine or the Ukrainian people.
Well, it's almost like a switch was flipped about 6 weeks ago. Like the shift was noticeable, and it went from Zelensky needs to stop this and end the war to the exact opposite of that. So, and it just seems like, the people who are pushing this agenda have decided, okay, the mask comes off and we just by force get what we want. I mean, that kind of seems like where we're at to me.
Yeah, it does. And, we've held out hope that President Trump was, again, just trying to tiptoe around this stigma, that he's in bed with Russia. But if he doesn't need to do that anymore. It's pretty obvious that, now everyone knows, including Democrats, what a complete farce that was. So, why are we continuing to do this? The Zelensky corruption that's been exposed of him and his partner, billions of dollars, and you knew it was serious when the EU cut off funding for that short period before he reversed his edict on his anti-corruption organization, which again is a two-edged sword, because that organization is simply the arm of the EU and the US that enables them to affect Ukrainian policy.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to see it. It's more like a hammer that he was trying to remove. And they said no.
But he was caught, and that just remains obvious. You still don't see anything going on in Ukraine. You've never seen Zelensky interacting at a hospital with the wounded and amputees and incredibly disfigured soldiers from burns and explosions. Ukraine all their hospitals are maxed out, their rehab centers, and men and their families are still fighting for, some sort of financial support so they can continue to live their lives. And none of that is happening. So, all these clues are there. They're not, again, like Russia Hoax 1, they're not circumstantial, they're physical. And all you got to do is look, put it together, and it all makes sense.
You're right. And I've talked to a lot of people involved in the medical field in Ukraine recently, and they're hurting. They need people. They're starting to, press anyone with any kind of medical experience. They're like, you're automatically drafted. You don't even have a choice. Even if you don't get the paper in the mail, you're part of the military now. So report here. So that's kind of
what's look how close then that is, Todd. We're not hearing about that. Why is the press not, blasting that all over? Why not? Why isn't every doctor, and there's plenty of doctors who would take leave of absence and go over there and do tours to help out, emergency room physicians. A fund could start up to help guys with who need prosthetic legs and arms, and there's a lot of those. You and I have seen that, again, hidden from the West by Western media, but it just shows you that their primary overriding mission is to hide all this so they can keep the war going. And it's
Yeah.
a horrible humanitarian crime, against the people of Ukraine and those soldiers who are patriots. They went to fight a war based on a bunch of delusional and manufactured scenarios that were not true. So the Ukrainian soldiers are just victims of the propaganda, just like Trump and just like the rest of the West
Completely
are.
agree. And you've seen that war after war in the West, right? I mean, what struck me recently is the Ukrainian, what's going on there, the way they're conducting all of this is just very similar to like the US going to war, from the uniforms to the structure of the military to the VA, all what got me is the cemeteries, and that was all, there was a lot of money that went into that. That was like a theatrical event, building all those cemeteries with all the flags. It's obviously some kind of, as you said, a patriotic, dog whistle to the population to get them behind this conflict. But we don't see anything in the news. They don't care about the people of Ukraine. You mentioned doctors. They don't care. They just want, as you said, the war to keep going.
Yeah, it's horrific. And again, if I could talk to President Trump, I'd bottom line up front, you're being duped by your advisors.
Yes.
Look at all the physical clues that tell you what's really going on over there. And then, we started out, I think, in a healthy, common sense approach. We're not taking sides, but that is, has fallen by the wayside.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
We were attacking Russia, which, is insane. They have legitimate concerns. And, again, a simple scenario that to allow people in the United States to understand Russia's point of view. If China had overthrown a duly elected government in Mexico or Canada in 2014 and installed an anti-US, not just an anti-US government, but a government who was committed to destroying the United States, and then over the next 7 years began lobbing artillery into Texas and New Mexico and killing 14,000 Americans. If we launched forces into Mexico or into Canada, would we be the invaders? Would we be the bad guys in this? No, it's a liberation. And that's the fact of what happened in the Ukraine war. Yet, again, as I mentioned before, Putin's shown amazing patience. Even in 2022, the Russians were serious about the Minsk Accords. And if they had been, just imagine if Ukraine had some common sense and took those accords signed on the bottom line, which they canceled at the last minute. But think if they had done that, they'd still have all their provinces except Crimea. And those provinces, all they had to do was give them autonomy and representation in the government, which everyone is supposed to have according to the UN Article 1 of the UN Human Rights Charter. So none of this makes sense. Now trying to make Russia into the bad guys makes even less sense.
Well, it's getting scary, Pete. I mean, you mentioned the attacking Russia. I mean, people may not have seen that. I mean, we're talking nuclear war now. I mean, Trump's like, I'm going to position nuclear submarines that carry dozens of nuclear MIRV missiles. So, that's absurd in my opinion. So
Yeah.
anyway, and I read
Well,
today,
no,
getting information that there's like some missile or nuclear tests possible in Russia this week, or they're cording off airspace. So I mean, this thing's heating up, man. It's not good.
yeah. Well, they have hypersonic missiles that we can't defend against. To me, the movement of the submarine, the indicator I got from that is, wow, this shows he's listening to the Hodges, the Kellogg's, the Keens. Crazy that this is being led by all these former, Department of Defense military general officers. But you remember when we played that tape of Hodges, that's what he was saying. Russia's bluffing. We need to be firing cruise missiles into Moscow. We need to take out all their oil facilities. These guys are delusional. And what you're bringing up about how dangerous it is, just like everything else, don't assume that all parties are rational decision makers. It's very easy to be duped or through bureaucratic inconsistencies get the wrong information and the wrong signals. Something like when you start getting into this, we're going to move nuclear submarines over there. We can defeat you with nuclear weapons, i.e. Lindsey Graham. You bring yourself into this dangerous red zone where any mistake or miscalculation could lead to nuclear war and destruction of the human population on the planet. So,
Yeah.
like you said, it's not funny anymore. It's not even like, wow, he's being duped. This is as serious of a crime as Russia Hoax Part 1, which started the war, enabled Biden to get in, enabled the Obama-Biden war in Ukraine to continue. But this is just as serious, and we have to wake up. We're living in Russia Hoax Part 2. Everything they're saying is what they're doing, and we need to stop it.
Well, it reminds me, the Dr. Strangelove. I mean, with, on the
Yeah.
going down on the nuke.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like they have that kind of like irrational, just psychotic view of what's going on, man. And maybe they want nuclear war. I don't know.
Yeah, you just listened to in next episode. Let's put a montage together of Keene and Kellogg and Lindsey Graham and the rest of them. They're on the mainstream news, including Fox News now, saying, hey, this moving that sub was the right thing to do. We need to, they'll back down. We got this. We're more powerful. And again, on every level, that's just false. And we don't have the military that could fight any kind of war right now. Europe, it's not even worth talking about it because, even Great Britain, I believe, has only got 1 or 2 combat-ready brigades in the whole country. And then you add in lessons learned and this new form of warfare, which you have to be, a realist, a rock-ribbed realist enough to say Russia is the most formidable military right now on the planet. And under your breath, you should be saying, we don't want to do anything that could get into a confrontation with Russia. But again, Russia's shown no indications. They've not verbalized. They've not done any mass behaviors that would indicate, even in the most extreme contingency planning, that they have their eyes on invading Europe. But they keep repeating that line, and it's Russia Hoax Part 2.
Putin said something today, which I saw that I was struck by Trump saying we're going to deploy 2 submarines. I mean, I would hope that we always have, nuclear triad submarines deployed in the right spot. So I thought that was almost comical the way Trump said that. And then Putin
Yeah.
said that today. He's like, they're always deployed. What do you mean? So anyway,
Exactly. It's part,
yeah.
it goes back to these advisors telling them, just laughing. Russia, remember Hodges laughing at Lavrov. Who's he to say that Ukraine can't have neo-Nazis? Who's he to say NATO can't be on their border? You just scratch your head when you listen to them. They're living in an alternate reality and just exposing themselves as individuals who don't understand either nature or human nature or history.
I
And
think it's worse than that. I think they're serving some other master, but I don't quite have my finger on it. But I can't believe they're that incompetent. It's just
Yeah.
intentional. It's intentional.
Yeah.
There's another article I want to bring up that Russia captured some active duty NATO officers. I guess a couple Brit officers and a MI6 individual. Do you know anything more about that?
Yeah, I've got my feelers out. I heard they really did capture individuals, whether those are when you hear names and ranks of the
Yeah.
individuals, it gives it some credibility. Why did Britain not come out the day after and just, show those three guys on FaceTime or Zoom or something else? Then I heard, and again, I have my feelers out. My guys are trying to confirm this. Then I heard that the excuse was these guys were war tourists. They were, there to see the history or whatever was happening. And that's as farcical as can be because this is an active duty combat zone. You don't go as a war tourist, to a country where you can get hit in the head with a cruise missile or a drone missile. So what we do know is if you go back to the two trains that were taken out, the bridges during the truck drone raid on Russian nuclear airfields, the C4 was found, and it was C4 that Russia knew where it came from. It came from Great Britain, and we also know that both the SAS and SBS are on the ground. When the U.S. pulled back, which was happening from 22 onward, but happened drastically, pull every active duty military individual off of the ground in Ukraine in 24 when Trump won. The MI6 took over the war, and the MI6 is the CIA and MI6 were running the war from 14 on. The MI6 now is in the lead because they have the operational guys on the ground. We do know again that SBS and SAS soldiers are on the ground right now in Ukraine, and without any more information, my supposition would be that those individuals captured were either SBS or SAS officers who were performing some kind of command and control, act on the ground, down in the south, right on the edge of the Black Sea, feeling they were totally safe. And
So
Russia figured it out.
They raided this facility, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
It only took 15 minutes, so Russia knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Yep. And if you remember in I think our very first podcast, I said, never underestimate Russia's EW signal intelligence capability. They've always been the world leaders through the whole Cold War.
I knew where they were.
Exactly. They were probably broadcasting away, probably on their cell phones.
Americans and Brits, I guess, they're horrible. They love to just talk in the open. It's from Vietnam on. The Viet Cong used to sit outside the bases and just listen to the maintenance guys on their bricks when the F4s were getting ready to go, and they knew an airstrike was coming. So I mean, it's pathetic. I mean, I used to get so pissed off at ComSec in the Air Force, but or with it was better at JSOC, but
Yeah, and I
just
think
just for our audience, let me just say SAS, Special Air Service, SBS, Special Boat Service, just so they know that's the British Special Forces. But go ahead.
the SBS is their SEALs, and they have proponency over the littoral, anywhere 50 miles of the Black Sea, is SBS territory. So they were there more than likely advising the Ukrainian Navy and Marines, and it looks like they got caught. If it turns out to be what we think it was, every Brit on the ground needs to really think hard, and Starmer and his mod need to think really hard about the implications, because Russia has every right to try them, to hold them as long as they want to hold them, and to target every other Brit and naval or NATO officer who's on the ground. And they shouldn't be on the ground.
It makes London a target, for God's sake.
Yeah.
I mean, so
yeah.
I mean,
You're
I don't
waging
think
war against Russia.
Yeah, Starmer's working for somebody else. I don't think they care about the UK at all. But I've also read that I guess these were active duty uniformed, but I think Putin said he would execute any mercenaries that got caught. Right? I think that was what came out a year ago. Maybe it hasn't been solved.
I haven't heard that, but
yeah,
a number of them been killed. I heard that one of my guys told me that some of the best fighters now are the Colombians, because they're fighting as units, the mercenaries, and there's no holistic units left in Ukraine other than their special ops guys. But all the units have been decimated to such an extent that, with new recruits, unmotivated, injured personnel, most units are at 60% in the Ukrainian military, 60% manning, meaning. And so, they're not fighting effectively, and they have no faith in their command. We've talked about that before. They don't take good care of their people. The guys who started fighting in 22 are still fighting in 25 and have no sign of coming home, no Eros day to look forward to. So you can just tell the writing's on the wall. It's going to be over with, if not in weeks, then in months for sure.
There's a lot of talk of a false flag now to get more different forces involved in this conflict. Trump just needs to end it. I mean, I would like him to go back to his original instincts, and I don't know what pressures are being put on him right now, but something is happening and it's not good. So we want to call it out. Pete, anything else you want to get out?
Nope, I'm good, Todd.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week on Ukraine SitRep. Thank you very much, Pete.
Sounds good. Take care.